Hey guys, welcome to the channel, welcome to another video. It's that time of the week again, it's Premier League predictions time. Another round of Premier League fixtures is fast approaching. And of course, this is the video where we go through each and every single game coming up this weekend in England's top flight division. Give my thoughts, give my analysis on the game, but most of all, of course, give my predictions on the outcomes of each and every single game coming up this weekend. Got some massive and tasty fixtures to look forward to. Last week saw a lot of controversy. What are we going to have in store this weekend when the Premier League kicks off another round yet again? Before we get into all of that though, I would like to remind you to please like the video and also subscribe if you're new. Both things always and very greatly appreciated. And of course, for you lot to get involved in the comment section, give me your thoughts, give me your opinions, give me your comments. But most of all, of course, this is a predictions video, so give me your predictions on how you think each and every single game this weekend will pan out in the Premier League. I'm sure it'll all make for great and interesting reading down below, so do get involved down there. But without further ado, let's get on with the predictions. Okay, we're starting things off with our lunchtime game for our Saturday viewing. It is at Kenilworth Road for Luton Town, taking on high-flying Tottenham. The Hatters had a double-header this week in terms of Premier League action. They picked up their first victory of the season against Everton last weekend, but just fell short in very late circumstances to Burnley midweek, whilst Tottenham are still unbeaten in the Premier League this season, after obviously beating Liverpool in quite controversial circumstances, as we've all been talking about all week. 2-1 against Jurgen Klopp's side. Tottenham remain unbeaten. Tottenham go into this game as big favourites, but don't let that fool you and don't let that be a foregone conclusion by any stretch of the imagination. 12:30 kickoffs can often throw a bit of a surprise for the weekend and can bust a coupon before the rest of the Premier League's actions even kicked off. However, in saying that, Tottenham should be winning this game. Tottenham are coming into this game full of confidence. You saw how much it meant to Tottenham to beat Liverpool last week, and they really should be beating Luton, whether it is home or away. In saying that, Luton will go into this game with fight, as they have done all season. They'll try and make it difficult for Spurs. They'll try and use the crowd to their advantage. But overall, I just don't think it will be enough. And that's why I see Tottenham winning. And that's why I'm going for a 3-0 win in favour of Ange Postecoglou's side. Next up, we've got Burnley taking on Chelsea, and both sides coming into this game off the back of victories. Chelsea on Monday night beat Fulham by 2-0, whilst Burnley picked up their first win of the season at the expense of Luton in a victory that saw Vincent Kompany's side win by 2-1. Interesting fixture. Turf Moor could be very difficult for Chelsea to contend with, of course it could. But overall, you would expect Chelsea to win. Maybe Monday night's game against Fulham was a turning point in the Blues' season. Mikel Mudryk seems to be picking up a bit of form and a bit of steam ahead of him, so he seems to be coming to form at just the right time when Chelsea need it most. Maybe Brozier's goal, albeit rather slightly fortuitous, maybe the kick up the backside he needs, maybe he's going to capitalise ahead of a returning Nicholas Jackson. There's a lot that can go on with this Chelsea side, as we know, because of obviously the amount of spending that they've done. And it will be interesting to see what the kind of starting 11 is for this game, whether or not we see the return of some familiar faces, or whether or not it continues with the kind of side that obviously saw him get the 3 points against Fulham. But either way, Mauricio Pochettino's side should be fancying their chances in this game, and that is why I've got to go with a 2-1 victory in favour of the Blues. Next up, Goodison Park awaits us for Everton against Bournemouth. Big clash between these two sides near the bottom of the table, of course. Everton, last time out, lost to Luton in a typical sort of Everton way, beating Brentford the week before, picking up their first win of the season, and then, of course, throwing it away a week later when they face Luton side, who hadn't won all season, and then win their first league game and their first game back in the Premier League at the expense of Sean Dyche's side. Whilst Bournemouth still winless, still without a win so far this campaign, and their latest result was a 4-0 defeat at the hands of Arsenal. So both sides are looking to get back into this one in winning ways. However, this game really could go any which way. It genuinely could. An Everton side at home is always difficult to predict. You would expect them to be much more difficult at home. But then again, you look at what happened last week when they were at home. And of course, they bottled it against Luton. Bournemouth play some nice football, but can't stick the ball into the back of the net. They leak goals as well. Their defence isn't exactly watertight. So this game really could go any which way, which is why I'm going to call it down the middle, and I'm going to say that this game will end in a draw, and I'm going to say that this game will end 1-1 from the final whistle. Next up, we're off to Craven Cottage. It is Fulham against Sheffield United. Fulham, of course, coming into this game on the back of a defeat to Chelsea on Monday night in a London derby of sorts, in which the Blues were 2-0 winners, while Sheffield United, of course, still winless this season. And last weekend, of course, they suffered another defeat at the hands of West Ham. Of course, West Ham. Again, 2-0. So both of these sides coming into this game on the back of 2-0 defeats, both looking to get to winning ways here. Unfortunately for Sheffield United, I see their winless run continuing. Fulham at home can be pretty difficult. Chelsea managed to find a way to obviously beat them at home on Monday, but for these kinds of games, Fulham tend to be very awkward and tend to be very difficult to break down, particularly when they're at home. They need to find some consistency in front of goal though, and I think this game could represent a good opportunity to get some goals under the belts of maybe their strikers going forward. And that is why I see Fulham winning this game and Marco Silva's side coming out of this one as 2-1 winners. Next up, we're at Old Trafford. It is Manchester United against Brentford. Huge game for Eric Ten Hag's side, who have been on a poor run this week. Losing last weekend to Crystal Palace 1-0, again, albeit in somewhat controversial or slightly controversial circumstances. Then they went midweek and faced Galatasaray in the Champions League and lost there by 3-2 in a game that no one really expected United to lose. But they come up against the Brentford side, who have been out of form a little bit in recent games. They obviously drew 1-1 with Nottingham Forest on Sunday. They need to get back to winning ways, Brentford. This game, I think they'll be fancying their chances, in all honesty. They're coming up against a United side that are leaking chances, making horrible mistakes, and they'll be fancying their chances. No doubt about it. Brentford play some great football at times, and I think if they play a counter-attacking style, and their counter-attacking style is on point, as it usually tends to be, they will cause United some absolute horrible problems. The only shining light for United is that Rasmus Højlund seems to have hit the ground running so far during the early stages of his Manchester United career. He'll be a force to be reckoned with going forward, I would imagine, and I'm sure he'll be fancying his chances against the scoring against his Brentford side, of course. But like I say, if the players behind him don't do him a favour, it will all count for nothing. United's mentality and belief seems to be fragile and weak right now, and if they do go a goal down in this game, I do fear that United don't have the mental strength to pull them out of that hole. Even if they are at home, a side last season that were almost unbeatable at home last season has seen them go on a few games now in which they've been hit and miss whilst being at home. How do I see the game going? Look, United could obviously pull the game out of the bag. They have the match winners to do so. And like I say, with Højlund, he seems to have hit the ground running. I wouldn't be surprised if they actually do win. In the same way that I wouldn't be surprised if United bottle it and Brentford go on to have a brilliant counter-attacking display that puts United to the sword. However, I see a bit of a clash of both. This could be a very interesting and exciting game of football that might be a little bit end-to-end, so this one could be one to watch, definitely, even if it is on the 3 o'clock blackout. But I see this game going as a draw. I genuinely do. It could go any which way, but I'm leaning more towards a draw. And I'm going to say that this game will end 2-2 come the final whistle. Saturday's evening clash we'll see is at Selhurst Park for Crystal Palace's game against Nottingham Forest. Big clash this one between these two sides. Palace, of course, coming into this game off the back of a 1-0 victory against Manchester United. Nottingham Forest coming into this game off the back of a draw against Brentford. We know these two sides are going to be a tough match for each other. We know that Palace are going to be tough at home. We know that Forest aren't going to be as good away from home as they are at home. But it still could make for a very intriguing game that I think both teams will fancy their chances in getting the victory overall just before, of course, we go into the international break. Forest acquiring well in the January in the summer transfer window. I think they're more set up to play away from home with some of the players that they've managed to acquire. So it'll be interesting to see if there are changes made and if they're going to have a different approach to playing away from home going forward. Crystal Palace, on the other hand, intriguing players, some interesting players at that, but they do have an air of inconsistency about them from time to time, which could creep in at any moment, and that's why Forest could fancy their chances. In saying that though, I give Palace just the slight advantage with them being at home, and that's why I'm going to say that Roy Hodgson's side come out of this game as 2-1 winners. Moving forward to Sunday's games, and first up we're at the Emirates Stadium, a huge clash this one between Brighton and Liverpool. Brighton, of course, coming into this game off the back of an absolute thumping at the hands of Aston Villa. 6-1 it finished to the Villains on that day. They'll be looking to bounce back and their fans will certainly be expecting a response from that absolute thumping last weekend. But they come up against the Liverpool side who, of course, will be looking to bounce back from defeat themselves. Again, quite controversial circumstances as we know, but Liverpool did lose their unbeaten start to the season at the hands of Tottenham last Saturday night. Big game, huge game. Both sides will be in action midweek in the Europa League. As at the time of recording, it is Thursday morning, so we won't go too much into predicting what the Europa League scores will be for these two teams later on this evening. But of course, they'll both be in action midweek. I expect heavily rotated sides, particularly on Liverpool's part. Maybe not so much on Brighton's part, given how the first game of their group stage went. So that could be a slight advantage in favour of Liverpool. But as we know, Brighton are still extremely tough. Brighton play some unbelievable football at times. And Brighton will be at home, so it will be difficult for Liverpool to contend with. This game genuinely could go any which way. If Liverpool turn up, show the same kind of spirit that they had last week, the same resilience, guts, determination that they had last week when they faced Tottenham, even when they had 10 or 9 men, Liverpool will get a result. If Liverpool crumble, if Brighton are just slick and on point throughout the entirety of the game, they'll blow Liverpool away, in my opinion. I think they can really exploit that Liverpool high line. But in saying that, Liverpool's attack could easily exploit Brighton's line of defence as well. This one is going to be a very intriguing game. This one I cannot wait for. I say that confidently because, like I say, this could be a very difficult game for the Reds. One I hope we come out and win, but I've got to be honest, I think with the way that both teams set up, I think the way that both teams can play football, I think if Brighton play how they did against Villa, again it was somewhat controversial circumstances that led to a couple of the Villa goals. I think Liverpool can really exploit that and can really go for the neck, so to speak. But I think also with the way that Liverpool has set up so far this campaign, I think the likes of Matoma, maybe even Evan Ferguson, will definitely be licking their lips at the amount of chances that could be created at the expense of this high line at Liverpool defence. In saying all of that, I'm going to go with a draw. I want Liverpool to win, obviously I do, but I've got to go with a draw. I think Brighton should not be underestimated, and that's why I'm going to go for a 2-2 draw come the final whistle. Next up, we're at London Stadium. West Ham United are taking on Newcastle United. West Ham, of course, both these sides actually going to be in midweek action. West Ham going to be in the Europa League tonight, like I say at the time of recording. Newcastle were in action last night against PSG in what was an absolute incredible Champions League night at St James's Park for the Geordies, as they managed to beat Kylian Mbappe's side by 4-1. An absolute incredible result and performance there by the Toon Army. And they'll go marching on into Sunday's game against West Ham at the London Stadium. In terms of the Premier League, of course, West Ham are back in good form, back to winning ways. They beat Sheffield United by 2-0 last week, whilst Newcastle, of course, they beat Burnley by the same scoreline of 2-0, of course. So both sides coming into this game in pretty good form. Like I say, maybe the extra 24 hours may have done Newcastle better than West Ham, but we'll have to obviously wait and see on that one. West Ham will be tough opposition. You can imagine how the game will go. West Ham will allow Newcastle to have much of the ball and will try and hit the Geordies on the counter-attack. It could work for them. It has worked for them in the past. This one could be a very, very intriguing game. But Newcastle seems to be picking up a head of steam right now. They seem to be picking up some good form and are getting some consistency in front of goal and are looking more and more dangerous than they were at the beginning stages of the season. So with that being said, although it is away from home, I'm leaning more towards Newcastle in all honesty, which is why I'm going to say that this game ends 2-1 in favour of Eddie Howe's side. Next up, we're at Molineux for a West Midlands clash between Wolverhampton Wanderers and Aston Villa. Huge game for both sides, this one. Wolves picked up the unlikeliest of victories and the most surprising of victories last weekend when they ended Manchester City's unbeaten start to the season with a 2-1 victory over Pep Guardiola's side. Pretty remarkable stuff from Wolves and Gary O'Neill's side. Whilst Aston Villa, of course, come into this game off the back of a huge victory against Brighton. 6-1 it finished in favour of Unai Emery's side. Of course, tonight they're going to be in Europa Conference League action. So again, there is the question mark over whether the extra game and extra preparation time for Wolves may actually be in Wolves' favour. But Villa will still be tough opposition, of course. Villa will still be prepared for this game. And I imagine Villa will certainly fancy their chances. They're going into this game off the back in good form. Ollie Watkins seemingly is back firing on all cylinders. Got a hat-trick last week, of course. Big performance from him last week. The likes of Moussa Diaby seems to have settled in well. Their defence is seemingly settling down after a few uneasy weeks at the beginning of the season. They're looking pretty good right now, Aston Villa. They're looking pretty strong. Wolves, on the other hand, hit and miss. They're awkward at times, but as well as that, they can be obviously dangerous at times. I think Man City worked that out last week, that Wolves simply took their chances, City didn't. And that's saying a lot, considering obviously Erling Haaland was leading the front line. It's huge for both sides. I'm leaning more towards Aston Villa, only just though. I think the inconsistency of Wolves kind of helps me in this scenario. Leaning more towards Aston Villa. I'm going to say that the Villains win this West Midlands clash by 2-0. I'm going 2-0 Aston Villa. And finally, the biggest game of this round of fixtures, the biggest highlight of this weekend, the main event of this round of Premier League fixtures comes from the Emirates Stadium. It is Arsenal against Manchester City. This one should be a belter to go into the international break with. I know, the international break's back. So sad, so depressing. But make the most of it this weekend. We've got a massive game to end this section of the season before we go into the international break. Mikel Arteta against Pep Guardiola. It is Padawan against Master, to use a bit of a Star Wars reference. This one should be an absolute belter. You've got an Arsenal side back to winning ways after their 4-0 victory over Bournemouth last week. They did fall midweek to Lens in the Champions League in rather surprising circumstances there. And to add insult to injury, Bukayo Saka seems to be a long-term absentee. So he is probably not going to be available for this game. You've got Manchester City, who of course lost to Wolves last weekend, but got back to winning ways midweek against RB Leipzig in the Champions League, as you would expect from the reigning Champions League winners. But it's still going to be a tough game. Arsenal dealing with injury issues, City dealing with injury issues. Both still have strong squads. Both still have the capabilities of potentially beating each other, causing problems to each other's defences. This one could be a very interesting and intriguing game that we have in store that should really ignite right from the first whistle. How do I see the game going? I don't think Arsenal are going to try and change their approach for anyone. They might be a little bit more reserved and maybe try and hit City on the counter-attack a bit more often. But I think if they really get into City, I think if they really, from that first whistle, get into them, have the crowd up for it, feed off that energy of the home supporters, I think they could really unnerve City, and I think they can really put City under pressure right from the off. I don't think it will be a game plan that Guardiola or City will like too much. I know that City's coming to this game with the usual suspects. I know they've got Erling Haaland that is going to be looking at that Arsenal backline and wanting chances aplenty. You've got Julian Alvarez, who I think is going a little bit under the radar this season. I think Julian Alvarez has been absolutely fantastic for Man City this season. I think he's actually been their most important player so far in a City shirt, and that's saying something. Like, I think he's really gone under the radar. The City midfield isn't at its strongest, but it's still pretty strong. It's going to be without Rodri. I think Arsenal will be loving the sight, or not the sight, of seeing Rodri in that midfield. I think that will give them a big boost. This could really be a very intriguing game, and I feel like Arsenal are playing City right now at a really good time for them, where they can really cause City some damage. Now, will that actually happen or not? I still think City and Guardiola will find a way to get through. I think if this was away from home, for whatever reason right now so far, Arsenal seem to be better away from home than they are actually at home. So I'd be leaning more towards Arsenal if they were away from home. But I just think with the way that City's set up, with the way that Guardiola is probably thinking about this game, and with the way that they obviously have clinical finishers, because that I think is going to be the key. I think City have the better finishers than Arsenal, and that's why I think that will be the overall difference maker on the day. How clinical are you in front of goal? Arsenal don't strike me as clinical. Jesus is struggling. Nketiah is struggling. Saka, like I say, may be out injured. It'll be interesting to see what the front line is for Arsenal going forward in this game. If that is to be the case, that's why I see City winning. That's why I see them being more clinical. And that's why I'm going for a 3-2 victory. 3-1. I'm going to go 3-1 victory in favour of Manchester City. And there you have it. Those are just the thoughts, comments, opinions, but most of all, of course, predictions of this guy. I want to know what you guys think. What do you make of all the games that are coming up this weekend? What are your own thoughts, comments, opinions? But most of all, of course, what are your predictions coming up this weekend in all of the games that the Premier League has to offer? I'm sure all of them will make for great and interesting reading down below in the comment section, so please do get involved down there. Otherwise, hit the like button on the way out if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you're new or want to see more content like this. Both things are always and forever greatly appreciated. And of course, thank you all so much for watching and listening. I've been Fletch, this has been another Premier League predictions video, and I will see you speak to you all again soon in another video, live stream, or whatever it may be. Cheers guys, take care, enjoy this weekend's Premier League action. I'll see you speak to you all again soon in another video. Cheers guys, thank you.